Jessica Semachko, who is the Director of Advocacy and Public Education at the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. In this capacity, she is responsible for leading the Greater Cleveland Food Bank's government relations and advocacy programs. Before joining the food bank, Jessica served as a senior policy advisor for Congressman David Throne, where she managed a nutrition portfolio that made investing in school meals and nutrition programs a top priority. Jessica has also worked with leaders from across the country on anti-hunger policies impacting families and children as a senior manager for Share Our Strength, No Kid Hungry, where she also had the opportunity to lead efforts related to Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act, Farm Bill appropriation strategies, and state policy issues. Jessica has more than a decade of experience managing and consulting on issues and electoral campaigns across the country. We welcome Jessica today, and with that, I'll turn it over to you, Jessica, to start the presentation.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's wonderful to be here with all of you today to talk a little bit about advocacy, but also key legislation and policy that we're seeing at the state and federal level. It's a busy year for anti-hunger policy with the Farm Bill reauthorization and our state budget. And so I'm excited to cover those pieces of legislation, provide some updates, and some tools to allow you to engage with your member of Congress and your local elected official to share the importance of anti-hunger policies and the impact of those policies on the communities that the Greater Cleveland Food Bank serves and the communities that we live. So Chris, again, thank you so much, and excited to be here. You know, I know many of you are familiar with the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. Tri-C is a phenomenal partner that we work with to address food insecurity among college students with the student pantry. And but I wanted to provide just an overview of what the food bank is and what the food bank does, who we serve, how that food comes to us, to get a better understanding of how our federal policies and our state budget impact how we distribute food and how we address food insecurity in our community. If you can move to the next slide. So our mission at the Greater Cleveland Food Bank is to work to ensure that everyone in our community has the nutritious food that they need every day. And as I just mentioned, you know, we rely on donations and philanthropic support, but a substantial portion of the food and funding that we receive to be able to address these issues come from our state and federal government. Next slide. So what is a food bank, or what does a food bank do? So every food bank is a little bit different, but at the core, we are a nonprofit that distributes food to smaller hunger relief programs, food pantries, like the student food pantry at Tri-C. We provide hot meals for seniors. We provide summer meals to students, and large food distributions similar to that at the Muni Lot in downtown Cleveland. Every county in the country has a food bank. Now, some states have food banks that cover multiple counties, and we have some that have one food bank for the entire county. It really depends on the situation on the ground. Here in Ohio, we have 12 food banks serving Ohio residents, and you know, we work with our food banks from across the county, or across the state, I'm sorry, to ensure that we are meeting the food needs of Ohioans. Next slide. The area that the Greater Cleveland Food Bank serves in the state, we serve 6 counties, and we start all the way out in Ashtabula, Lake, Cuyahoga, Cuyahoga, and then as we move down to the central part of the state, we also serve Richland, and Ashland counties. And, we serve about 125,000, we distribute 125,000 pounds of food a day, just under 50 million pounds of food a year. And where does that food come from? That food is donated by retailers, manufacturers. I think we've all participated in a food drive, so we appreciate the canned goods and the shelf-stable items that we receive from food drives. But we also require a substantial amount of our food and funding from, again, the state and the local government. Once we get that food or funding, we then at our food bank, with the help of literally an army of volunteers, we repack, resort, and prepare that food to distribution to member agencies and partners like tri-c across the state to ensure that we're meeting people in the community where they live with the food that they need to thrive. And this is a little snapshot of the network of partners and programs that we provide the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. So, we obviously distribute food to kind of what I think many people think of when they think of food distribution at food pantries, at a host of different sites, from large food distributions like the Muni Lot that we work with the City of Cleveland, to churches and libraries across our service area. We also provide senior meals at senior centers, hot meals that we prepare in our kitchen at senior centers. We do direct home delivery to seniors. And we also work with our school systems and different organizations across the state to be able to provide backpacks and summer meals for students. We've also started working in the food as medicine space, working with federally qualified healthcare centers to be able to provide nutritious food to help improve health outcomes, specifically as it relates to issues like diabetes and high blood pressure, really using food to help improve health, especially for those ailments that we see, especially among marginalized communities and communities that have suffered the greatest from food insecurity. And what we realized, I think, and I think an important takeaway is that food insecurity is a symptom of other issues. These needs don't exist in isolation. And so, we obviously want to address the immediate issue of food insecurity by providing the meals that individuals need to thrive and survive. But we also want to work with the community to ensure that we are reducing the difficult choices and providing pathways and services to be able to connect individuals to create greater housing stability, which will in turn reduce food insecurity in the long run. And so we talked a little bit about this, in our mission. We talk about, ensuring that everyone in the community has the food they need every day. And, we do that with working with our partners across the state and helping enroll individuals in SNAP programs and other nutrition programs. But what we also want to do is reduce food insecurity tomorrow. And so we want to think beyond today and really look at those root causes of food insecurity. And the three drivers that we see, three biggest drivers of food insecurity, are employment, housing, and healthcare. It's hard to know where you're going to prepare your next healthy meal if you don't know where you may sleep that night. When you are having to make the decision between medication and food, and when you are, underemployed, or you are facing a low wage job where you just don't have the funds to be able to meet your daily needs, including food. And so we were excited this year, last year, we moved into our new Coit Road distribution center right down the street from our old South Waterloo facility. And we are now able to, it's greatly expanded our food distribution capabilities, but we wanted to be able to repurpose that old building to be able to have an impact in the community. And so we're currently repurposing and anticipate opening our first community resource center at our old South Waterloo location. And we are working with partners, including Tri-C and others from around our service area to be able to connect individuals and provide a hub of resources. So we have housing partners, and we have legal aid. We'll have shoes and clothes for kids. We will have Metro will be there with a federally qualified healthcare center so needed in the community near our South Waterloo location. We'll also have workforce development and a host of other partners to really provide a one-stop shop so individuals can connect to other services. Again, with the thought in mind that we really want to address the root causes of hunger to be able to help move people into more stable situations so that they will have to rely less on the food bank. And, we will eventually put ourselves out of business, so to speak, really ending hunger in our lifetime. So who do we serve? I think, next slide, Chris. If we would have looked at this chart maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we would have seen that adults 18 to 59 made up a little bit more, closer to 57% of the clients that we serve. Today, they make up a little under half. 24% of our clients are seniors, 27% are children. We served nearly 350,000 families or individuals in our service area, meaning about 1 in 5 individuals in those 6 counties required a local hunger center for food assistance in the last year. As we talk a little bit more about the federal legislation and some of the threats to programs like SNAP, these figures are going to be important. So as we kind of keep that 24% of seniors and that 27% of children, on your mind while we talk about some other things, because we're going to come back to this, and those are going to be important figures. Now, where does that food come from? We know what we do, we know who we serve, how are those resources coming to us? So about 30% of the food that we receive, 36% is from donations. Again, thank you all for the food drives and the cans that you've deposited. That is from retailers big and small, philanthropy big and small, donations big and small. I was excited to join a group of Girl Scouts just the other day in our repack, where we were able to, we had a bunch of 8th graders come in on Friday where we made backpacks. So, our volunteers are essential to what we do, both on the donation side, but also making sure that food is prepared and distributed. We also purchase about 23% of our food. This also provides us the opportunity to create more diversity in our food stuff. Very important to ensure that we are distributing food to the best of our ability, that people are familiar with, that people know how to use, and that people are eager to consume. And so we need to make sure that we are being responsible and making sure that we have culturally diverse and culturally appropriate food. And so our purchasing power allows us to diversify some of the food that we get from other sources. And then if you look at this pie, about 20% of our food, a little over 21%, comes from the federal government through USDA, through programs like TFAP and CCFP. And then about 20% come from the state of Ohio. So, as we look at the amount of food that is coming into the food bank, a little over 40% of that is directly impacted by the federal farm bill and the Ohio state budget. Both of those things happening this year. So a very important year for nutrition policy and food insecurity. So, as I mentioned, there's a lot going on both in Columbus and in Washington, D.C. this year to help address the issue of hunger. Really the cornerstone of federal legislation as it relates to nutrition is the federal Farm Bill. And the Farm Bill is an expansive piece of legislation. We anticipate that the 2023 Farm Bill will be $1.3 trillion over 10 years. So an impressive investment in food and farm. And what we need to do is make sure that we have a strong Farm Bill to be able to support the programs that the food bank relies on and so many individuals in the community. In addition to the nutrition elements of the Farm Bill, it is also the largest piece of legislation that impacts agriculture, the agricultural economy, and food producers. While 80% of the Farm Bill is nutrition related, the other 20% is agriculture. And I think that we've all, over the course of the last year, have been exposed to foodflation. There's a host of causes, but we are becoming more and more aware. I think public is becoming more and more aware of the importance of ensuring that we have a strong food supply chain to ensure that that the food that is those essential nutrients, those essential calories, are accessible to individuals. Also, when food is more expensive for a household, it's also more expensive for the food bank. So our donations and our dollars, both federal and philanthropic, go a little bit less far when we're dealing with high food costs. And so, the combination of agriculture investments and nutrition investments really help maintain the food security net. So, I kind of touched on it, why the Farm Bill is important to the food bank. The last Farm Bill was signed into law in 2008. And, it's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. This is a phrase that was first, that President Obama first gave us in 2014 when we started talking about the Farm Bill. And it's true. It really provides, from the agricultural side, infrastructure, conservation, innovation, and jobs. And on the health and nutrition side, ensuring that we have that we are supporting our food supply chain, that we are supporting our nutrition safety nets. And those include TFAP, CSFP, and SNAP, which we'll outline here in just a moment. So probably the largest program that that the food bank relies on for foodstuff is TFAP. And as we look at TFAP, the USDA purchases essentially commodity foods that that have a high production rate. So these are some of the healthiest foods that we see in the food bank. They're produce heavy, and they make up a substantial portion of the food that that at the food bank that we distribute. When we look at that 21% number in terms of where food is coming from the food bank, 21% of that was from the USDA. A substantial portion of that was from TFAP. When we serve nearly 350,000 families, and of the 49 million pounds of food that we serve, about 9.5 million pounds of that came directly from TFAP. So really essential for the operation of the food bank and ensuring that we get nutritious food, both produce and protein, into the community. And then there's CSFP, the Commodity Supplemental Food Program. very similar to TFAP, but this is directed specifically for seniors aged 60 and older. And this provides shelf-stable food for our seniors. So, you know, anything from dry beans to canned fruit and vegetables, peanut butter, and powdered dairy. And so in FY22, we were able to serve more than 4,000 seniors through CSFP with food boxes delivered directly to homes in senior facilities. And then, you know, the third program, and probably I would say the program that we often hear most about when we're talking about the Farm Bill is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, formerly food stamps. And it can be one of the most divisive programs. And I think that for that reason, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about who receives SNAP, how SNAP operates, because I think it's important to be able to talk about these things, because I think there's a lot of misinformation and folks aren't always completely clear on how this program operates. I think the most important thing to remember about SNAP is, you know, there was 41 million Americans, more than 41 million Americans that received SNAP last year, including 1.5 million Ohioans. In the 6 counties that the Greater Cleveland Food Bank serves, we had over 275,000 individuals receive SNAP benefits. SNAP is based on need. So there are formulas in place that determine who is eligible for SNAP. And then the budget for SNAP expands to meet the need of the program. So when we talk about SNAP, we are talking about a program that is directly in line with the nutritional needs of Americans and Ohioans. And when we look at who is using SNAP, nearly half of all SNAP recipients were children. Nearly 70% of these children were school aged. When we talk about, you know, how many dollars are going to each household, what is the benefit of SNAP? I think many people heard recently that at the end of February, the emergency SNAP allotment piece that was part of the CARES Act and pandemic emergency, the public health emergency as it relates to the pandemic, where there is an increase in baseline SNAP funding per household. Those end at the end of the month, and we anticipate, as we've seen in states where SNAP benefits ended earlier, states chose to end their pandemic allotments prior to the federal cutoff. We saw an increase in Florida. There was a 30% increase in need at the food bank. And we anticipate that we're going to be seeing those kind of increases at the Greater Cleveland Food Bank and the other 11 food banks around the state. But again, as we talk about the SNAP benefit for a household, pre-pandemic, an average household with children receiving SNAP was $403 a month. Over the course of the month, that came to about $2 per person per meal. So, you know, when you think about what SNAP is able to do, SNAP is a supplement, and but it is so incredibly important. While it is a supplemental nutrition program, for many individuals, it is the bulk of the dollars that they receive to be able to meet their nutritional needs. And one of the main issues that we see around SNAP is, you know, questions around who is eligible. You know, 70% of households have children, seniors, or individuals with a disability, and 80% of households are, there is one individual who is employed. And, you know, I think the important thing to remember is, you know, food bank's still a gap. And so, you know, when we look at how we are addressing food insecurity, we play an important role, but we cannot make up for underfunding at either the federal or state level to address nutritional needs. So for every meal that the food bank or a food bank in the Feeding America network provides, SNAP provides 9 meals. So as we look at possible cuts to SNAP, as we look at the intersection of cuts to SNAP, the food inflation, and increasing need, we as a food bank and donations, we can't make up the meal gap if we see significant cuts to SNAP. We just aren't able to make up that. So we have to really be advocating for a strong farm bill this Congress. I think another important fact is we're talking about the Farm Bill and we're talking about SNAP. SNAP is one of the most effective forms of economic stimulus. For every dollar of SNAP benefits, there's $1.50 of economic activity generated. We talk often about food deserts and keeping money in a community. And, it is so important that we have grocers that are we partner with grocers around our service area, and it's so important to have them in partnerships. It's important for them to be in every community. And so as we look at that economic stimulus, it's also ensuring that grocery stores, it's supporting the model that allows grocery stores that provide fresh fruits, vegetables, and proteins, and every community has the resources that they need to be able to keep those stores open in every community across the country. So as we look at, the Farm Bill, again, and the SNAP program, which will be, I think, the most contentious of the provisions within Farm, we have seen a couple pieces of legislation and policy come up that has us as nutrition advocates and advocates for our community concerned. And the first one is changes to work requirements. So currently, individuals 49 years, from 18 to 49, there's a work requirement. You must work 20 hours per week to be able to receive SNAP benefits. If you fall below that threshold, there's a 3-month time limit for benefits. And once you reach that 3-month time limit, then there is a 3-year period which you can no longer access SNAP benefits. So you have 3 months, and then you are essentially frozen out of the SNAP program for 3 years. And then you can, at the end of that 3 years, you can then, if you find yourself in need, can reapply for benefits. Again, SNAP is designed so it meets the need of the individual. So the Farm Bill is an authorizing legislation. So all of the funds that are distributed through SNAP benefits aren't part of the appropriation process. So we are looking at the Farm Bill to determine who has access, who can access these benefits, and then the program meets the need, as opposed to some other programs that are appropriated where there is a set amount that is provided and that is the amount that is distributed. So the way to essentially reduce the number of individuals who are receiving to make cuts to the program, one of the ways is to remove the number of individuals who are eligible for the program. And so, Chris, if you could move back just one slide to the work requirement. So again, from 18 to 49, individuals have to work 20 hours per week in order to receive SNAP benefits. If not, they're subjected to that time limit. What we have started to see is some provisions that are being lifted up. We've seen this in previous Farm Bills, but it's to extend the work requirement to what they call able-bodied individuals, to reduce that to individuals. Currently, if you have children in the household, you are not subjected to that time requirement. What they would like to do is they would like to limit that or expand that requirement essentially to say only if you have children under 7 in the house are you exempt from the work requirement. And so what that means is that there are families with school-age children who will be removed from um, SNAP eligibility if they fall on hard times, are unable to meet that work requirement. The other thing that they're looking to do, and again, as I mentioned, when we think back to the previous slide where we talked about who the food bank is serving, we are serving 51% of the individuals that we're serving are children and seniors. And so what they are also looking to do is kind of expand how they are defining, or I'm sorry, restrict how they are defining seniors. So currently the work requirement does not apply to individuals over 49, so 50 years and older. What they would like to do is to change that eligibility requirement or work requirement for individuals who are 50 to 65. So what they're trying to do is essentially squeeze the number of people who are able to receive the benefit. If we were to see just the work requirements change, we are talking about 10 million individuals nationwide that would be purged from SNAP benefits. If we look at Ohio specifically, we're looking at 385,000 families who would lose benefits, about 29% of families that are currently participating in the SNAP program. We're looking at 170,000 school-age children who are at risk of losing SNAP benefits, and 75,000 older adults age 50 to 64 who are at risk of losing SNAP benefits if these provisions were included in the Farm Bill. The second threat to the SNAP program is eliminating state flexibility. So currently there's 2 provisions in the Farm Bill that allow states to have greater authority in how they execute and implement the SNAP program. So the first is broad-based categorical eligibility. And essentially what that does is it creates it allows states to look at assets on an individual basis, and also to be able to create an off-route to benefits. So basically, if a state chooses to adopt a less restrictive asset test, families and seniors wouldn't have to spend down their entire savings to be able to access a SNAP benefit. And, as we were talking about root causes, and we were talking about how we can create long-term stability, one of those is being able to have savings to be able to weather a rainy day, emergencies come up. These are the things that create instability, that create situations that lead to additional employment insecurity. It leads to food insecurity. It can lead to additional healthcare concerns. When you don't have that modest savings to be able to address when an emergency arises, it can throw you into a situation where a moment of an emergency can become something that really can put you in a situation where it creates a great deal of instability for a household. The second is states are also allowed to, if there's high rates of unemployment, they're able to eliminate some of those work requirements in the time limit. So if you are currently unemployed and you are living in an area that has a high rate of unemployment, the state can eliminate that 3-month time limit. And, we have seen all but one state use some state flexibility, either in terms of the asset test or being able to reduce the time limit that individuals have because of high unemployment rates. And so what we really want to see is for states to be able to continue to have this flexibility to be able to ensure that the program is meeting the needs of the residents of the state and that we can take into account individual circumstances in states. In Ohio, about 12% of individuals that are currently receiving SNAP have been admitted into the program essentially because of these state flexibilities. So another situation in which we're looking at basically eliminating a benefit for about 12% of SNAP recipients in the state. So the Greater Cleveland Food Bank is urging Congress to really double down on our commitment to ending hunger by strengthening the Farm Bill. So pushing back on all of the threats to reduce the number of individuals who have access to SNAP benefits. But again, going back to some of those programs we spoke about that are part of the Farm Bill. So ensuring that we are increasing our TFAP funding so we have sufficient food to be able to meet the increasing demand. We want to increase SNAP's purchasing power to make sure that we're setting benefits in line with inflation. We want to ensure that the application and the administrative burden that comes with applying for SNAP, that we're making sure that those are streamlined and that the enrollment process is as easy as it can be for individuals who are seeking to access SNAP. And then we also, again, as we're talking about work requirements, we really want to ensure that we're making investments in workforce development and workforce support, so individuals who are facing barriers to facing barriers to employment have resources to be able to find employment and stay employed, and that we have supports for them to be able to weather some of those emergencies that sometimes come up. Again, we want to make sure that we reauthorize and streamline CSFP so we can ensure that our seniors are getting the meals that they need. And again, we want to ensure that we are including culturally appropriate foods in our hunger relief programs so that we are, again, meeting people where they are with the food that they know and are familiar with. So all of the federal programs, if you think back to that pie chart again, where we think about where the food is coming from in our state to our food banks, it's a combination at 41%, is almost a split down the middle between federal programs and state programs. And so, we are also advocating, it's an odd year, and when it's an odd year in Ohio, that means it's a budget year. And so we are advocating in the state budget to ensure that the support for Ohio-based nutrition programs are meeting the increase in demand. And so we are looking for a doubling of funds for the Ohio Food Agricultural Clearance Program. So currently there's $49 million in the budget. We're asking for an additional $49 million to be able to ensure that we have the food that we need at the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, at the other 11 food banks around the state. The interesting thing about this program is that all of the food that is bought through this program is from Ohio producers. So this is really, again, just like the SNAP program, this is both an investment in addressing food insecurity and supporting those who are struggling with hunger, but it's also a great lifeline and support for our local Ohio food producers and supporting them as they as we look to strengthen the food supply chain and make sure that we're able to be able to provide some of that food locally. I think this is an interesting slide because it just talks a little bit again about the rate of inflation over the last year. That's food, that's housing, and that is utilities as well. So when we think about these increased asks that we have, it's also important to remember that that dollar goes a little bit less far than it did a year ago. And so really essential for both families who are struggling with hunger, but also the food bank and their partners to be able to meet the demand and the need of the community. So for those of you who know Schoolhouse Rock, I'm just a bill, but I'm also just a budget. So we talked a little bit about, what the Farm Bill is, the components of the Farm Bill, threats to the Farm Bill, why it's so important for food insecurity. I wanted to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the Farm Bill and how it makes its way through Congress. So the Farm Bill is reauthorized every 5 years, and it's up for renewal this year. The committees of jurisdiction have started the reauthorization process and have started to solicit input to establish priorities for the next Farm Bill. So we started to see listening sessions across the country. And again, these bills, when you think about how a bill moves through Congress, these bills will originate in both the House and the Senate Agricultural Committees. That's where they really hash out the details of what's going to be in the Farm Bill, what the SNAP provisions are going to look like, what the baseline formulas are for TFAP and some of the other nutrition and agricultural programs. Those will then move to, out of committee, they will then move to the full floor of their appropriate chamber. So the House Agricultural Committee will move the Farm Bill to the House floor, and then the Senate Agricultural Committee will move it to the Senate floor, and then they will pass it out, and then those bills will come to essentially what's like a conference committee. So they'll have to work out and hash out any differences between the House and Senate version of the bill. And then that bill will make its way, once it is passed, once they hash out the differences, they'll take a full vote of that compromise bill out of the House and the Senate, and then it'll make its way, once it passes, it'll make its way to, fingers crossed, to the desk of the president. We have 3 members in Ohio from the Agricultural Committee, both the House and the Senate. We are lucky in the sense that we have 2 members of the House Agricultural Committee, our only 2 Ohio House members in Northeastern Ohio. So we have Rep. Chantel Brown and Rep. Max Miller, both newer members of Congress who are sitting on the House Agricultural Committee. So they'll be the ones hashing out the details in the House on what will be included and how the Farm Bill will look. And then in the Senate, we have Senator Sherrod Brown, who sits on the Senate Agricultural Committee. So he'll be voice for Ohioans in the House as that bill moves through committee and through the legislative process. So again, I kind of mentioned it's an odd year in Ohio, which means it is a budget year. In Ohio, every 2 years, we do our operational budget. That starts the same way that it does on the federal level. It starts with the governor releasing his budget. He did that at the beginning of February. And then the House is the first one. The Ohio House is the first one to take up the budget. And so what we've seen is there's been hearings. The House Finance Committee has been holding hearings on a host of budgetary issues, and they are set to, you heard it here first. We're hearing that maybe next week that we will see the House version of the budget come out of and be voted on by the House Finance Committee. And then that will make its way to the full House floor. And then at the beginning of next month, the beginning of May, we'll see that same process repeat itself in the Senate. And then once we have both a House and a Senate bill, again, similar to the Farm Bill, we'll then see we will see a conference committee where they will hash out the differences between the Senate and the House bill. And then each chamber will vote on that compromise bill. and then that bill will make it to the governor's desk. Now, the governor can either sign that bill, he can veto that bill, or he can make some line item changes. Any of those changes or vetoes need to go back to the House and be voted on before it would come back to the governor's office. This all needs to be completed by June 30th, which is the deadline to finalize and sign the operating budget. We have seen in previous years that they have not made the June 30th deadline, and they can do essentially an emergency stay that will kind of keep things moving as they were until they can hash out any disagreements in terms of the House, the Senate, and the governor coming together to finalize that bill. So that's essentially the timeline. We anticipate, again, the House has really moved through their process. So as we're looking at advocacy opportunities, really the state Senate is starting their process, and they'll be starting their formal hearings and public testimony in the coming weeks. Chris, if you could move back just one slide. Nope, you were right. You're right where you were. Forward again. Thank you. So, as I said, I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit about hunger in Ohio and Northeast Ohio, how we address that through, our work at the food bank, your work at the pantry, and how the state and federal policies help support that work as well. I think the important thing to remember is that we all have a part in that process. It seems very removed from us, but advocacy matters, and advocacy can really change the path of legislation and how policy is shaped. According to the Congressional Management Foundation study, direct constituent contact is the most effective manner to shape the views of members of Congress. And that is we see a similar type of effect at the state and local level. It's really important to have advocates with different experiences and perspectives talk about their lived experience, talk about how these issues and why these issues are important to them. It really shows that there's a strong base of support for nutrition programs. And legislators need to hear from their constituents as they're making, as they are formulating their positions on these issues. We have new members of Congress, new members of the state legislature who, may not have been exposed to some of these issues. And this is a great opportunity to educate them, share your story, share why it's important to you and why it's important to their constituents. So I think, oftentimes we think this is not, these bills are moving forward, things are happening, where do I fit in the process? And I think it's important to remember, wherever you sit, you can stand up and help end hunger, and that you can be an important player in how these policies and how this legislation and how our state budget is formed. A few thoughts as you think about how you can advocate, or what are the best ways to approach advocacy. And I think, again, direct constituent involvement is the most effective. If there's a program, for example, the student pantry at Tri-C, if there's other programs that you're involved in, inviting your member of Congress or your state legislator to see how that program operates, who you're serving, the importance of that program, so they can really have an experience and understand why the legislation they're voting on and why this funding is so important. Another great opportunity for advocacy is, and in the next slide, I'll share some windows for you, but to meet with your member of Congress, when they're in district during office recess. Summer offers a lot of opportunities to do that. There's a July recess and an August recess. And these are great opportunities to meet with your member in his in-district office, or again, those are particularly good times to invite policymakers to your programs or to other advocacy events when they're back in the district. I was a congressional staff member for a long time, so I can tell you that we used to get a lot of calls from constituents who were sharing their position on different legislative issues. And, you know, those staff members are reporting to their member of Congress. So with what they're hearing from constituents, what they're hearing from organizations. And so, you know, calling your elected official's office, while you may not reach your legislator or your policymaker, having those conversations with the staff are very important. They are doing a lot of the work to help draft these policies and really letting them understand the importance of this issue for their constituents is very important. So don't be discouraged if you are only speaking with your staff member, not a legislator. Again, another great way is writing your elected official to share your story, you know, different data or resources to, you know, illustrate the importance and the implications of their decisions as it relates to these policies. You can, you know, do it the old-fashioned way and send a letter in the mail or send an email. Either one works. They get them both. And then other opportunities are to participate in lobby days or hold your own advocacy day to talk about specific legislation. We're going to be having a Friends of the Food Bank lobby day on May 3rd. Be happy to share that information around. If anyone's interested in going to Columbus, we'd love to have additional voices join us to talk about the importance of these policies, share personal stories. I think the most important thing you can do when you're talking to an elected official is combine both data and a personal narrative, a story that connects on the emotional level on why these issues are important. As I mentioned in kind of the process for the Farm Bill and the budget, these committees are starting to take comment and feedback on these bills, and you can write the committee directly and share with them why these issues are important to you and the impact these policies will have on you, your family, and your community. And then lastly, social media is a great tool to help both engage with lawmakers, to inform your network about the importance of these nutrition policies. So I always say, don't forget to tag your legislator and you know, make sure to include the relevant hashtag. You know, and we here at the Greater Cleveland Food Bank are at the ready to support you in any of these activities. I'll share with Chris after this session. We have a toolkit that helps to guide you through a visit with your legislator. We have some email templates and social media templates that we can share to help you on your advocacy journey. And then lastly, these are just some of the calendars from the House and the Senate that go over kind of the in-district work periods. As you can see, you know, in July and in August, those red dates are when they are back in the district. And so as you're looking at opportunities to maybe meet with your member of Congress or invite them to an event in the community, you know, those red days are in-district days, which would be the best days to be able to set something up with them in district. So again, July and August, and this is for the House.
Jessica, thank you so much for your amazing presentation with so much information to process. And of course, we will share the PowerPoint with everyone so that you have that information available to you more fully. We do have several questions in the chat that folks have submitted. So to start with, thank you, Greater Cleveland Food Bank, for all you do, especially for providing items in our food pantries here at the college. With these increased cuts, will the amount of weekly food, in parentheses pounds, our students are able to receive in our food pantries, will those increase?
So currently, there is no, we are hoping that as we advocate for stronger policies, that we will be able to secure additional food resources. That's why we want to advocate for the strongest budget, Ohio budget possible, and a strong farm bill. However, the resources that we currently have, we anticipate that we will be able to meet the current need and maintain the current levels of food distribution that we are currently at. We are so thankful again for the generosity of so many individuals who donate to the Cleveland Food Bank who make that possible.
Next question, are SNAP benefits dependent on what the individual earns? For example, someone who's earning $20 plus per hour in a fast food, would that place someone out of SNAP benefits?
SNAP benefits are available to individuals who are 2% of the poverty line, and that is adjusted for household size. So that's why it's so important, as we talked about, that state flexibility to really be able to ensure that individuals, there's not a hard cliff of benefits, so that individuals who may see an increase to wages or additional income, that we are allowing for flexibility so they can, so they are not kind of pushed off of the benefit immediately, creating additional financial stress in the household where, maybe earning $1 more an hour or $2 an hour or coming into, a small amount of money can actually, set you back because you will end up losing those benefits. So that's why that state flexibility is so important to advocate for, because it creates that flexibility in the program to ensure that individuals, as they see their income increase, have a little bit of an off-ramp to the benefit.
So once again, thank you, Jessica. I do want to stress, it was brought to my attention, we do thank you for sharing the fact that we can participate in any lobbying efforts, especially in connection with the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, which we appreciate. But for our employees at the college, if you are interested in doing that, please coordinate this through our government relations office, that, we'll be able to coordinate something here at the college. But we certainly encourage everyone in this call and at the college to do that, right? Question, what happens to the food that is expired?
Yes. So we, before we moved to our Coit facility, we had to pay to have it removed. We certainly do not want to, if it's not something we're going to serve to our family, that we're not going to eat ourselves, we are not going to distribute that. We need to ensure that we're showing dignity and respect to every client that we serve. We are lucky at the new facility, we have a partnership where we are taking expired food and we are turning it into bioenergy. So we are trying to take that food waste and turn it into something that is beneficial for everyone. So some clean energy from those expired yogurts.
Yes, thank you for that. So it is very exciting. And for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to see the new location at Coit, let us know if, like, I'm serving on the board currently, but Jessica, could help us maybe coordinate a tour, or more importantly, serve as a volunteer in the volunteer efforts that are promoted as part of the work of the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. With that, Jessica, we thank you once again. As we're here at the end of our presentation and it is noon. And in the interest of time, just quickly, just want to remind everyone, there is another session presented by the Greater Cleveland Food Bank on April 25th, which is next week. It's called The End of the Public Health Emergency and What It Means to Food Security. So please be sure to join us on the 25th at 11 o'clock via WebEx once again. Thanks so much, Jessica and everyone. Again, we will provide this recording for you and via our website on the Stand for Racial Justice Alliance.
Thanks so much for having
Thank
us.
you. Thank you, everybody.